A man with a plan, a man with a vision for Simsbury. I'm John Hampton, State Representative. Welcome to another edition of Office Hours with State Representative John Hampton. Of course, I'm referring to Eric Wellman, our first selectman.
Oh, I thought we were talking about you, John. No. Good to see you.
Welcome,
Thank you.
Eric, to the show. I can't believe it's been a year since you were sworn in, just a little over a year, as Simsbury's first selectman in the new era of Simsbury's town manager form of government. And of course, I was referring to you as a man with a plan, a man with a vision, because you've done such an extraordinary job at the helm and have done so many great things for the town, and I know you have great plans for the future. So I just thought I'd spend some time and talk about the past year and how it's been for you, and looking toward 2019, what the outlook is. So
Great.
Thanks for being with me.
Well, thanks for having me. It's
Absolutely.
Great to be here, and Happy New Year, and congratulations on another 2 years at Hartford.
Thank you very much. Yes, Happy New Year to you too. So tell me about your year. Did it go by in a blink?
Literally, a blink. I would say that this year, if it's defined by anything, it's defined by transition. We hired our very first town manager. We have hired 4 new department heads, finance director, parks and rec, police chief, and I'm forgetting the last department. Oh, planning.
Planning, that's right.
Yeah, so it's really been a year of transition as those department heads have been onboarded, getting to know their staffs, and really getting to know this town. And one of the great things about this transition too is that some of the folks who are coming on board as new department heads have been promoted. So they already are generally familiar with the lay of the land.
And you had one town employee come back to Culture, Parks and Rec, right?
Yes, Tom Tyberski.
Tom Tyberski, yeah. That's great.
Exactly.
Everybody wants to come back to Simsbury.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's do a town government 101 for folks at home who don't necessarily, or maybe don't still understand the nature of our new form of government. We had Board of Selectmen, first selectman form of government, I being a former selectman for a long, long time. And the issue of moving toward a town manager was dramatic and new and controversial in some ways, but the town spoke, and I think they voted in referendum in, when was that?
This was 2016.
2016 to make the transition. So how are you different from the old model of first selectman, and what are your roles versus the town manager?
Yeah, sure. So
Please.
One thing that's not different is there's still a board of selectmen that is, popularly elected from around the town, with 5 members, and the 6th member being the first selectman. So that hasn't changed. What has really changed is the job of the first selectman. They've basically taken the first selectman's job and they've split it between 2 people. So now currently I would say, the legislative leader. So
Crafting policy.
Crafting policy, leading Board of Selectmen meetings. I would also say that I serve as, I don't want to say a figurehead, because that's too ceremonial, but I would say I'm sort of the chief elected face of the town.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll, be at many events and ribbon cuttings and things like that. And then the other part of the job, for sure, is continuing with constituent service. So people will reach out to me with challenges or issues that I help them work with. But there's a professional town manager now who is running the day-to-day of the town. She's essentially the CEO of Simsbury, and all of the department heads, instead of reporting to me as the first selectman, report to her.
What are the pluses of this form of government in your opinion?
So maybe, I don't know if this is a bad thing for me to admit, but I voted against it. It wasn't something that I was originally in favor of, and now I was wrong. I think that there are, my biggest fear in moving in this direction was that we were going to lose something that makes Simsbury really special, which is the level of civic participation that we have. And I think that makes us really unique when you look at other towns, especially towns that have town manager forms of government. Having said that, I have seen firsthand how some of the pluses can outweigh the negatives. So I think that one thing that the town manager does is it depoliticizes a big part of our government. So now, instead of me as the first selectman bringing policy to the Board of Selectmen for them to either approve or reject. It's now a nonpartisan figure taking what we hope are best practices from around the state and the country to us as proposed policy. And I feel like it's really taken a level of politics and partisanship out of it, and it's allowed us to focus on what makes sense as a town based on best practices, as opposed to, some of the more petty stuff that happens when politics enters the equation.
Yeah, I've watched your meetings, many of your meetings I watch on SCTV, which we're on right now, which, as you know, is a great community resource, and to catch up on state meetings and town meetings. And you have really set a great tone for bipartisanship, and you're really a consensus builder. And I see the respect, the back and forth of debate and ideas, and you really seem like you've created a climate of problem solving without the, like you said earlier, the rancor and the nastiness that could occur in some political
Yeah, and
circles.
I would say though too that it goes in both directions, because that's a climate that I've very consciously wanted
Fostered.
to build and foster. But I also give my Republican colleagues a lot of credit
Sure.
because they were all veterans of the board. I'm this new person. Who is this person coming in? And they've really been nothing but wonderful to me from the very beginning. And I appreciate the two-way, both communication and I would say teamwork that I feel. I feel like our board is not 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats, which it is. It's basically a team of 6 volunteers, which is what we are, trying to do the best for the town.
And you're the first millennial first selectman, correct? I believe.
I don't
you
know how far back you'd have to go in Simsbury's
think
history,
you
but
are.
certainly in my memory.
How does that affect your leadership style?
Well, I feel incredibly entitled. No.
Yes.
Isn't that what they say about
Yeah, correct.
millennials? I don't know. I guess one of the best compliments I feel like anybody gave me is we had a conversation. It was during the budget conversation last year. And we didn't agree on everything. And there was, I think, some good, healthy dialogue and disagreement. But at the end of the meeting, I was approached by a woman who was there in the audience, and she said, "Wow, I wouldn't have known who is a Republican and who is a Democrat based on how the conversation unfolded."
That's great.
And I think that our state and our country are best served
Correct.
by that model. And I know that's something that you support
Absolutely.
very much too.
Absolutely. People are tired of that climate at the national level for sure.
Yeah. And this might sound like a funny thing to admit, but I think we get into our political bubbles, and most of my personal friends are Democrats. It's just sort of who I've gravitated to, and since I've gotten on the Board of Selectmen, I've gotten to know a lot of Republicans a lot better, not just elected folks, but just people in the community. And when you just, our media loves to paint the picture of look at how divided our country is. But I'm convinced that when you really sit down and you talk to most people, most of us want something that's pretty similar.
Yeah.
We want security, both for our country and for our lives. We want good health care. We want good jobs. And if you focus on some of those basic building blocks, I think we have a lot more in common than, I don't know, the conventional wisdom gives us credit for.
Absolutely. Well, you've had an incredible first year. Do you want to talk about a few of your accomplishments that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, so I would say that, this isn't something you put on campaign flyers, but I think it's the hiring that we did in town and making sure that we had a phenomenal town manager, which is what we do. Maria Capriola, I could not be, cannot say enough good things about her leadership. And then the team that she has around her is really gelling, and I have no doubt that they are on a great footing to do great things in 2019. I would say that one of the big things that we accomplished in 2018 was the solar farm, the Deepwater Wind proposal.
Sure.
And that was something that the Board of Selectmen actually voted to appeal. We appealed the Siting Council's ruling that allowed the solar farm to come. not because we wanted to derail the project, but because we knew that there was an opportunity to make the project better. And what we've been able to do is shrink the footprint of the project, make sure there's appropriate vegetation, so we're not, it's not ruining the vistas that we come to enjoy in that area. And I think most importantly, making sure that it's going to be built safely, so ensuring that there's going to be proper soil and water testing. And those were all things we were able to do through the appeal. And now, my feeling is that it's going to be not just a good project and a good thing for the town, but people ask, well, what's in it for us? What, why is this going to be a good project for us? And one of the things that's been my focus is how can we take some of the pressure off of the residential taxpayer?
Yep.
And this is a development that is going to be bringing in over $600,000 a year in taxes and not costing us a lot of money. They're not using town services, they're not using schools. It's really essentially free money for the town to defray some of the burden that's on the residential taxpayer. And the Deepwater Wind Solar Farm is just one example of how we're trying to do that on a more broad scale.
Well, I was impressed how that issue was thrust upon you, but how you really jumped into it with both feet and heard both sides of the issue and really researched the issue, talked to people, went out into the field literally, and brought the issue to fruition. And it's a difficult process, as you know. It's hard.
Thank you. And my predecessor, I can't give her enough
Lisa,
credit. Lisa Havner really set the table to allow for the appeal that we did. And then, it's a tough thing to explain to people that we're appealing this thing, and I'm not going to speak for the other board members, but it's something that I support the project. I just didn't support the project in its originally proposed form. And now we've got something that I think is going to be much better for the town, and they're going to be our neighbors for the foreseeable future. Yeah.
How was your first budget cycle? Was that a challenge? Was that a learning experience?
So I didn't know what to expect because I'd never been through a budget cycle, but I'll tell you what was really impressive. Our town manager started on January 29th of last year.
Oh, okay, so it's just been about a year.
And I believe it was 4 weeks later she presented her first budget. And it was very impressive seeing that. And just working through it for the first time. It was my first time working with this group of selectmen, working with the town manager, and working with the Board of Finance. And this next time around, I've learned a lot of things the first time that I think are going to make the second time, even better.
Is it going to be a difficult budget year? Of course, we're going into
Well, I was going to turn to you and say, you tell me.
I know. There's a lot of uncertainty, of course.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty.
And many of us, I know myself and Senator Whitco's, try and make our government more predictable for especially our residents, but for our town leaders to craft a budget that's good for our town, good for our residents. But what's your forecast for the budget ahead?
Yeah. So the Board of Finance each year gives the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen guidance. So they will tell us what our budget should come in at. And this year they actually gave the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen different targets. So the Board of Ed is asked to come in at no more than a 2% increase, and the Board of Selectmen a 2.75% increase. And I think the philosophical reason for that difference is that really the town and the services we're providing are growing as our population grows, where at the moment our schools are not growing.
Yep, there's a dip, right? Our enrollment is...
Yeah, although that is forecast to turn around in a number of years.
Yep.
But yeah, for the time being, so we're looking at a 2.75% target.
Are there capital projects coming up that you want to highlight that you're looking at?
Well, I would say that there's going to be some, I'll defer the capital project question in a moment, but there are going to be some developments that are coming online that are going to, I think, again, help take some of the burden off of us taxpayers. And one is the former Hartford property. Anyone who drives down Route 10 can see that there's something significant being built there. So that's both a senior living facility, there's going to be some commercial office space, and there's also going to be some apartments.
I didn't realize that was going to be mixed use, and I often will get questions that aren't necessarily related to the town, but in particular, a lot of people are talking about that development, and I'm forgetting the name of it. You probably
It's
are
the
too.
Silverman property, and they're
Yes.
calling it the Ridge at Talcott.
Talcott Ridge?
Yeah.
Okay. So mixed use, assisted living? Or senior 55 and older?
No, it's going to be more on the
More
assisted side.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. When's the projected completion of that? It's moving fast, it seems.
Yeah, so I'm told next summer.
Okay. Exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is, and it's also. I'm hearing from some residents who are seeing a lot of construction, a lot of change, and they want to know what's going on.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are, and I get calls or inquiries about kind of the rapid growth of apartments in town. And why do you think that's happening? And are they filling up?
Why are we seeing so many apartments? So the developers that I have met with are telling me that the occupancy rate is very strong. In some cases, there are waiting lists.
Really?
I think some of the stereotypes we think about when we think about rentals are not the stereotypes we're seeing with these. These are expensive. So these are largely being marketed toward probably young professionals, and also I think some people who may have had larger houses and are looking to downsize. So sort of both ends of that spectrum. But we're talking about rentals that are north of $2,000 a month.
Okay. So in terms of the commercial side of it, is it going to be a large commercial or mid-sized commercial interwoven into that development?
In this particular
the
development,
Talcott.
I'm not as close to what the commercial side is. It's not going to be, I'm told, sort of retail. It's more, businesses that are
bringing into their tax dollars as well.
Yeah,
That's great.
and I just want to go back to there has been a lot of change in town, and there continues to be. And I was actually just driving the entire length of Hot Meadow through Simsbury, and it was just remarking on a lot of the things that I was driving by are not things that we would have driven by 3 or certainly 5 years ago. And one priority for me is how do we manage this growth and manage this development in a way that maintains what makes Simsbury a special place to live, and maintaining that very important sense of place, while also realizing that things change. And how do we manage that?
It's good to hear you say that. I mean, as a townie, as a lifelong resident of this town, I think it's really extraordinary, and I'm proud of the fact that both sides of the aisle have done a great job of growing Simsbury without throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Simsbury still has an amazing character. You can go into it and you're in a unique town, whereas other towns, there's a Starbucks, a Walgreens on the corner, and it's just kind of this anonymous, colorless, a lot of the towns are. And you go into Simsbury and our natural resources and our small businesses and our trails and the river, and I think the town's done a great job, and now you're carrying it forward and keeping that in mind, that we want to grow, but we don't want to destroy what draws people here.
And I'm convinced it's not an either or.
No.
It is how do we grow, but if there are new buildings coming into town, how do we make it look like they've kind of always been here, rather than they kind of plopped here from outer space one day?
Yep.
I travel from time to time for work, and I'm just struck by how much of our country looks like you could be anywhere.
I know.
And then you come to Simsbury, and I think part of it is that we're blessed with this natural geography, in that you've got the ridge and you've got Hugh Blind Tower, but you also got these different ecosystems, from farm to suburbs to even, to a limited degree, some downtown style living.
Yep. Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a balance, but I think we're doing it well. And as I said earlier, you're certainly a man with a good vision and a plan. And what's great about you is that you're so thoughtful, and really have put a lot of thought into what your Simsbury should look like in the next 5, 20, 30 years, looking forward for future generations, and making it an attractive place to live, retire, do business.
Absolutely.
Tourism. We're so blessed with the Performing Arts Center and the statues this summer. And
can I just say a big kudos to the Chamber of Commerce for
Oh,
organizing
absolutely.
that. That was unbelievable, and it blew away my wildest expectations.
yeah, I'm still thinking, I see them out there and somebody's really still, and I think, oh, are they a statue? I'm like, are
Yeah.
they still here? They were great.
And it was interesting, too, to see how our residents, I think, I'm going to call it a coping process, where the first week they arrived, I got emails from, this is amazing, to I hope none of my tax dollars went to support this stuff. And then as they were here for something like 6 months, then I think most people were a little sad to see them go.
No, I know. It was wonderful. Now, talk about your typical day as first selectman. Or is there a typical day?
There is no typical day. And one of the things that I wanted to point out is that now the job of first selectman is a part-time job. So I do work outside of town.
Yep.
I work for Aetna.
Yep.
And I do, for folks who don't know, I do Lean Six Sigma process improvement work. So what that means is I work with different businesses within Aetna to help them basically run smarter and more efficiently. And I wanted to take some of that skill set and apply it to town government.
What a great match.
So a typical day may mean that I actually have a morning coffee at Anna's Kitchen with a resident or somebody else. And then I go to work. And then I come back and I often have a meeting or two in the evening. So my day is often sandwiched.
And then are you liaison to other committees? Like when I was on the board, the first selectman went to other meetings.
Yeah, so I have formally made myself liaison to the Economic Development Commission, which is a
Brand
new
new
commission that we just established. And I'm also the liaison to tourism. And the reason why I put myself on both of those is because I think the synergies between economic development and tourism, like tourism is a component, an important component of economic development.
How does this new EDC committee look, and how does it differ from the old EDC commission?
Yeah, I really appreciate you asking that question because that's something we gave a lot of thought to. One of the things we wanted to do was to give the new EDC term limits. Because we value experience, but we also want to keep the ideas fresh. So no member can serve more than 2 3-year terms. So after 6 years, it's time for people to move on and serve the town in other ways.
How many members are there?
There are 7 members.
Okay.
And the other thing we wanted to do differently is we wanted the Board of Selectmen to appoint them, as opposed to having the town committees
The parties.
appoint
Okay.
them. And the reason for doing that is, one, to make it purely and truly nonpartisan, but the other is we wanted to look at the Economic Development Commission holistically, and we knew we wanted different skill sets. We wanted some business owners. We wanted someone with marketing expertise, someone with tourism expertise. And if you have 2 different groups that are appointing people in a vacuum, it's very hard to do that holistically, which is why the Board of Selectmen looked to do that. And it's interesting because we appointed the group without looking at party affiliation, and we ended up
Great.
appointing 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans,
Oh my
and
God.
1 unaffiliated. It just so happens it worked out that way.
And have they formally met now?
They have, yeah. They've had 2 meetings.
Okay.
And it's really neat. The Board of Selectmen, the other thing we wanted to do differently is make sure they had really clear direction. So the Board of Selectmen gave them 4 specific goals or deliverables, things we wanted them to do, and they've broken up into smaller teams within the commission to really work on those things. And they're going to then report back to the Board of Selectmen. If I could just touch on a couple.
Sure.
One of the things we want them to do to start with is look at the recommendations from the old Economic Development Commission that has done some phenomenal work over the years and say, which of those recommendations have we not implemented that we think we could still benefit from? So let's start there rather
Great.
than reinvent the wheel. The other is we want to look at the business incentive programs, so
Tax abatement.
tax abatements and other things that we can do to sweeten the pot, both for businesses that want to move here and existing businesses that want to expand. And that's another thing they're going to be doing. And I actually can't stress that enough, that we don't want to just focus on bringing new businesses in. It's actually a lot cheaper to retain a business and help that business grow than it is to find a business that doesn't exist and convince them to move here.
Very
So
exciting.
we want to do both.
That's great. I also wanted to highlight the fact that it's great to work as a state rep with a first selectman who's so engaged. And I know you and I were talking earlier and talking ongoing about the vaping issue,
Yes.
and you're taking a lead on addressing that issue in the town, and we're going to be working on it in the legislature. So I really look forward to working on the issues that kind of cross over to both of our universes. And
Yeah, likewise. And it's something that I know that this Board of Selectmen is very concerned about. And one thing that was eye-opening to me when I was first elected, because it's been a little while since I've been in a high school and certainly a middle school, is how pervasive the vaping is. And these products that are, especially the flavored products, that are really being marketed to people who are under the age who should legally be using them. It's really criminal to see.
Yeah.
And I look forward to working with you on this issue. I'd love to stay close on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know the Community for Care is a group that works and addresses all the issues of mental health, opioid addiction, and things like vaping, and really staying on top of the issues locally, which is terrific.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And our police department as well, our police chief, and you're very engaged in the public safety and well-being of our young people, which is so critical.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on a really important point. Is if we're going to tackle this issue, this is not purely this is not something that our schools alone can handle. It's something our police alone can handle. It's really a team effort.
Now, just to refresh folks, the Community for Care is a group of clergy, police, counselors, parents, advocates, right, that
Yeah.
get together on every other month, maybe? I know it's chaired by Cheryl Cook
Yep.
and Chris Kelly. I mean, there's
yeah,
teachers.
Cheryl will be so mad that I don't know how often they get
but there's
together.
a great
but
wealth of people who are talking about, in the old days in Simsbury, you didn't talk about, drug abuse or suicide or mental illness and things
Yeah.
like that. And they're doing more than talking. They're putting into action a lot of really productive, constructive initiatives that are going to save lives.
Absolutely.
Because, every day there's new technology or new stuff out there that's potentially harmful to our children. So we need to be vigilant.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's your New Year's resolution for the 2019 for the town of Simsbury? Your top 10 or top 2, top 3?
I'd like to continue to look for ways that we can run as a town as efficiently as possible, to be the most professional organization that we can be, and also the most efficient organization that we can be, while providing the services that our residents want and require. And to me, that starts with making sure that we have simply the best school system in the state of Connecticut. And it means that we're really good stewards of our taxpayers' dollars. We're never going to be the cheapest town to live in, for a lot of reasons. We don't have highway access. We're not going to have the same kinds of businesses that a Farmington is going to have, simply because of our location. But we have other assets that I think are unique, that we can leverage and make the most of, to make sure that we have the tax dollars that we need, to make sure that our schools are the best that they can be, to make sure that we have the amenities that will keep our seniors here and happy and healthy, but at the same time making sure this town is as affordable as it can be, so all of us who live here can afford to live here.
Eric Wellman, thank you so much. A man with a plan, a man with a vision. You're doing a terrific job, and I'm so excited to work with you. Look forward to working with you in 2019 to doing more great things. So I wish you and your family a happy 2019, and this great opportunity for both of us to wish the residents of Simsbury a happy new year, happy 2019 as we close out 2018. Thanks for being here on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks, John. I appreciate
This has
it.
been another edition of Office Hours with State Representative John Hampton, and we'll see you next time. Happy New Year.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.